Why hello there everybody and welcome back to GSL-English. My name is Gideon and in today's lesson we are going to focus on British English. So as always, it's my pleasure to give you all a very warm welcome back to our class today. And as I said before, we are focusing just on British English today. So we're going to test your listening skills. So get ready to answer some questions. We are going to look at some vocabulary and expressions that British people like to use. And at the end of the class, you will have a chance to practice your British pronunciation. We've got a lot to get through today. So let's get started with exercise number 1. So this is going to be the first of 3 listening exercises. Now, I'm going to read a short text out loud. I want you to listen very carefully because I'm only going to read this text once and then I'm going to ask you some questions to see how much you understood or how carefully you listened. And then after that, we are going to break down the vocabulary together. So let's go. Listen carefully. I heard some lads chatting away in the pub last week. They were having a pretty heated discussion about which is the best flavour of crisps. Is it salt and vinegar or is it prawn cocktail? They couldn't decide, so in the end they tossed a coin over it and prawn cocktail won, which I do agree with. It's the far superior flavour. Okay, so that was the first text that we are going to look at. Now, let's test your listening skills. I heard some chatting away. I heard some chatting away. Who did I hear chatting away? I heard some lads chatting away in the last week. Where were they chatting away? Probably one of my favourite places to be. Of course, it was the pub. I heard some lads chatting away in the pub. They were having a discussion. They were having a discussion. I used 2 particular words there. Can you remember what they were? Or did you pick it up? They were having a pretty heated discussion. About what? What were they having a heated discussion about? Very important topic. About which is the best flavour of crisps. And we had 2 options. Did you get the 2 options? It was between salt and vinegar and the second one was, you got it, prawn cocktail. Salt and vinegar and prawn cocktail. Personally, 2 of my favourites. They couldn't decide, so what did they do? In the end, they did something. What did they do? They tossed a coin over it. We'll look at what that means in a moment. And of course, prawn cocktail won, which I feel is the far adjective flavour. What adjective did I use? It is the far superior flavour. Let me know in the comments how many did you get right. But now let's look at some of the expressions that we used there. The first piece of vocabulary that we used was lads. I simply used lads. And when we talk about lads or a group of lads, we're talking about a group of young men. Can refer to older men, but usually just refers to a group of younger, late teens, early 20s, 30s, that kind of age group of men. And then we spoke about them having a pretty heated discussion. A pretty heated discussion. Now, when we talk about having a heated discussion, it's a kind of discussion where emotions are involved. And here, of course, we're talking about a very important subject. We're talking about the best flavour of crisps. There's some strong opinions. So there were strong emotions and probably some strong words used. But I used an adverb before that. Pretty. Now, this doesn't mean pretty looking. This adverb means to a moderately high degree. A moderately high degree. So when we talk about them having a pretty heated discussion, it was quite high. Emotions were running high. Opinions were running high. So it was pretty heated. And of course, let's just clarify, what do we mean by crisps? Well, in American English, they would be referred to as chips, but we Brits refer to them as crisps, that fried potato snack. So they couldn't come to a conclusion, so they decided to toss a coin over it. What does that mean? Well, if you take a coin, it has two sides, doesn't it? Heads or tails. So you toss a coin, and it's a 50-50 choice. But the result, whatever way the coin lands, is the result. So let's say salt and vinegar was tails, prawn cocktail was heads. They flipped a coin, landed on heads. So what flavour won? Prawn cocktail. Just as a note, salt and vinegar is pretty much what it sounds like. Salt and vinegar. We don't really say salt and vinegar. Salt and vinegar. Salt and vinegar. And then we have prawn cocktail, which isn't fishy. Don't get me wrong. It's almost quite acidic, but it is brilliant. Give it a try. If you ever come to England, grab a packet of Walker's prawn cocktail crisps. They are amazing. And obviously I think so because I spoke about them being the superior flavour, which means that they are higher in rank, status and quality. They're the best flavour of crisps. But there you go. That is the first listening exercise. We've looked at some vocabulary. Now, repeat after me to practice your pronunciation. I heard some lads chatting away in the pub last week. They were having a pretty heated discussion about which is the best flavour of crisps. Is it salt and vinegar or is it prawn cocktail? They couldn't decide, so in the end they tossed a coin over it and prawn cocktail won. Which I do agree with. It's the far superior flavour. Okay, let's move on to listening test number 2. Listen carefully and then I will ask you some questions at the end. I love going for a Sunday morning drive. I don't have a fancy car, but there's nothing like booting it around some country lanes on a crisp morning before everyone's up and about. There's a greasy spoon that I stop at on the way home. They do the best fry up. Okay, bit of a change of topic here, but let's see how much you got. I love going for a Sunday what? And this is true. I do love doing this. I love going for a Sunday morning drive. Well done. A Sunday morning drive. Now, I don't have a car. Used an adjective here. I don't have a fancy car. But there's nothing quite like around some country lanes. What word did I use there? Booting it. There's nothing quite like booting it around some country lanes on a morning. It's talking about the weather on a, what word did I use? On a crisp morning for everyone's, we've looked at this expression before in a previous video, before everyone's up and about. Now, here's an interesting one. There's a little, I'll give you a clue. Actually, no, I won't give you a clue. We'll look at that in a moment. Did you get the two words here? There's a little greasy spoon. Now, I don't mean that literally, but we'll look at what I mean in a moment. There's a little greasy spoon on the way home, and they do the best fry up. Well done. Let me know how many you got right. Let's break down some of the vocabulary. So I said that I don't have a fancy car. Now, if something is fancy, it's elaborate, decorative, and often quite expensive. So here, by saying that I don't have a fancy car means that it's not a great car. You know, it's not a car that's going to turn people's heads. It's not fancy, but it's still my car. I love it. And then I said booting it around some country lanes. This means to drive in a fun manner, but of course within the law. So you're not speeding, you're just driving in a fun manner within the restrictions of the speed limit. Then I spoke about doing this on a crisp morning. I love crisp mornings. It's when it's cold outside. Maybe, there's a crunch to the grass, the fallen leaves, there's a crunch on the ground, but the sun's out. That fresh morning, it invigorates you, often gives you some life. Best weather to go for a little Sunday morning drive. Where do I stop at? I like to stop off at a greasy spoon, which is just British slang for a caff. They do cooked breakfasts, but yeah, a greasy spoon. Greasier the better, I say. And what do I get at the greasy spoon? Get a fry-up or a full English fry-up, which is basically a full cooked breakfast. Sausages, bacon, beans, tomato, eggs, toast, hash browns, whatever you want, basically. Just a big breakfast that fills you up until lunch. But yeah, you got to try a fry-up or a full English breakfast if you come to England. So that is listening exercise number 2. Now repeat after me and practice your pronunciation again. I love going for a Sunday morning drive. I don't have a fancy car, but there's nothing like booting it around some country lanes. On a crisp morning before everyone's up and about. There's a greasy spoon that I stop at on the way home. They do the best fry-up. Okay, here is our third and final listening exercise. I want you to listen very carefully as I read this text and then ask you some questions. My hours changed at work recently. I'm not over the moon about it, but it is what it is. I used to be able to grab a lift with my mate to the office. Now I'm going to have to walk. I guess I'll have to get a new brolly, as this time of year it seems to chuck it down every time I step outside. Okay, let's test your listening skills one last time. So, my changed at work. What changed at work? Horrible when this happens. My hours changed at work. Then I used an idiom here. I'm not over the moon. I'm not over the moon about it. But it is 3 words. It is what it is. Great expression. We'll look at that in a moment. I used to be able to do what? I used to be able to grab a lift. Grab a lift off my mate, but now I'm going to have to walk. I guess I'll have to get a new what? Did you get this? A new brolly. As this time of year, it seems to do what? It seems to something to do with the weather. It seems to chuck it down every time I step outside. Again, and finally, how many did you get right? Let me know in the comments. But now let's break down some of that vocabulary. Well, I spoke about my hours changing at work. And this basically just means the times that you are working, the times that are set by your employer have now changed. I said that I wasn't over the moon about it. Now, if we take that idiom over the moon in a positive sense, we are happy, we are delighted about something. But I said, I'm not over the moon about it. So I'm not happy. I'm not delighted. But even though I felt that way, I said that, it is what it is. This is a brilliant expression. We use this to talk about a situation that cannot be changed. There's nothing we can do about it. So we just have to accept it and either get on with it or move on. It is what it is. There's nothing we can do. I spoke about, before I used to grab a lift with my mate, which he would drive past my house, so I'd hop in his car, to grab a free ride to get transport to wherever you need to go. To grab a lift. I need to buy a what? A brolly. Yeah, this is British slang for umbrella. brolly, umbrella, that thing that keeps the rain off your head. If you visited England, you'll know them well. Because what happens every time I step outside? It seems to chuck it down, which means to rain extremely heavily. So you need a brolly. So there you go. That is the final set of expressions we will look at. Now let's practice our pronunciation together one last time. My hours changed at work recently. I'm not over the moon about it, but it is what it is. I used to be able to grab a lift with my mate to the office. Now I'm going to have to walk. I guess I'll have to get a new brolly. As this time of year, it seems to chuck it down every time I step outside. That is the end of our class today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you picked up some new British expressions that you can use in your conversations. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments and I'll see you all very soon. Have a good one, guys.